Good morning, Blue Jay friends, and thanks for being here. You are listening to Blue Jays vs. Them, and I'm your host, Jerry Schwinnard. If you're new here, welcome to the show. I hope you'll like it and stick around and become a regular listener. For my returning listeners, thanks for coming back. If you found this podcast from the link on Facebook or Twitter, or whatever podcast provider you listen from, I want to thank you for tuning in. You can also find me at the website at www.bluejaysversusthem.ca. That's bluejaysvsthem.ca. You'll also find my social media links on the website. If you've opened the chapter markers, you'll have a good idea what I'll be discussing in this episode. We'll be looking at the weekend series versus the Atlanta Braves, the 4-game series versus New York Yankees, the first 40 games, basically a quarter of the season, and my predictions versus what actually happened. The 50-50 draw of remaining early bird prizes for May and the May Grand Prize Jackpot. In Blue Jays history, we'll take a look at the National League West Division. I'll preview our series and history for the weekend series versus Baltimore Orioles. Next week's 7-game road trip starts with 4 in the Trop. What is our history at Tropicana Field? And finally, I'll provide a preview of next week's episode and some closing remarks. Last Friday, the Jays began a 10-game homestand that will wrap up this weekend versus the Baltimore Orioles. My preview for that series a little later on. In my preview versus the Atlanta Braves, I predicted a 2-1 series win for Toronto. Chris Bassitt started the series with a complete game shutout. Since 2013, 5 of Toronto's starters, not including Chris Bassitt, have had 17 complete games, and only 7 of them have been for shutouts. The last was Hyun-Jin Ryu in 2021. Ryu's complete game was Game 1 of a doubleheader, and as part of the COVID protocol, was only for 7 innings. R.A. Dickey had 6 complete games with Toronto, only 1 for a shutout. Mark Burley had 5 complete with 2 shutouts while with Toronto. His last complete game shutout came on June 3, 2015 versus the Washington Nationals. That was the last time a Blue Jay pitcher had a 9-inning complete game shutout. Marcus Stroman had 3 complete, with only 1 shutout. Drew Hutchinson has 2 complete, both were for shutouts. Now he's back in the organization pitching for Buffalo. No, I didn't go back to 77 to find out who had the most, maybe during the offseason. Back to Chris Bassitt and Friday's game versus the Braves. As I just mentioned, Bassitt pitched a complete game shutout, only allowing 2 hits, 2 walks, and striking out 8. Braves starter Spencer Strider took his first loss, pitching 6 2/3. He only allowed 5 hits and 1 walk, striking out 12 Blue Jay batters, allowing 2 runs, 1 earned. Whit Merrifield scored on a Springer 2-out single. The unearned run scored on a pass ball. Varsho hits his 6th homer of the season in the 8th. The final score, Blue Jays win 3-0, out-hitting the Atlanta Braves by 6-2. On Saturday, Jose Barrios got the start against Bryce Elder. Barrios only pitched 5 2/3, striking out 3 batters and giving up 3 walks. The Braves got 6 hits, including a 2-run homer in the 2nd inning. I want to mention something here. 2 episodes ago, I ranted about Alex Verdugo's walk-off home run trot around the bases. Showboating, after earlier in the season, he went on a podcast and complained about how Manoah went about his business. Now, I didn't see Saturday's 2-run homer by Marcell Ozuna. I looked for it, but the footage I found didn't show his entire trip around the bases. My good friend, a Red Sox fan, whom I've mentioned before, commented and emphatically agreed with my assessment of Verdugo. He called me and asked me if I saw Ozuno's, which I hadn't. By the way, if anyone else saw it and knows where I can see it, let me know or send me a link. Thanks. His assessment of the home run showboating on the base paths is that it's disgusting and has no place in the game. Yes, Joe Carter fist pumped and clapped and jumped all around the bases. The guy just won a World Series. I have to agree with my friend. I'm not a fan of showboating trots around the bases. There is a difference between celebrating and showboating, and I want to get into this topic a little bit more, so I'm going to table it for now, as there's a lot to cover in this episode. Kiermaier went 3 for 4. Eric Swanson, who came into the game with bases loaded and only 1 out, earned the win, giving up no runs. Jordan Romano earned his 10th save of the season. Toronto secured the series win, and in doing so, handed the Braves their first series loss on the road. Toronto seems to be ending a lot of other teams' winning streaks this season. The final score, Toronto won 5-2, out-hitting Atlanta 9-7. The Jays also stole 5 bases, 3 by Whit Merrifield. The Braves only managed to steal 2. Yusei Kikuchi took the mound on Mother's Day against Colin McHugh. It was also Alek Manoah bobblehead giveaway day. Alex's mother threw out the ceremonial first pitch. In what only can be described as sloppy baseball on both sides, both teams combined to commit 5 errors. The Jays committed 2 throwing errors, while the Braves' defense lacked communication. Outfielders running into each other and not making catches. Kikuchi arguably had his worst start of the season. No, not arguably, his worst start of the season. Only pitching 4 innings, giving up 5 runs, 4 earned on 9 hits. 3 of those hits left the park. He did strike out 7 batters without issuing a walk. The Blue Jays were trailing 5-4 in the bottom of the 9th and were down to their last out with the bases loaded. Danny Jansen managed to hit a single to bring in Guerrero and Chapman to win the game and sweep the series. The final score, Toronto won 6-5, out-hitting the Braves 13-10. This was the only meeting of the regular season versus the Braves this year. On Monday, the Jays began a 4-game series versus the New York Yankees. Alek Manoah took the mound to start the series, and he didn't have a very good outing, only pitching 4 innings, giving up 5 runs on 6 hits and allowing 7 walks. He only struck out 3 batters. 2 of the hits were for home runs, both in the first inning. A solo shot by Aaron Judge, his first of 2 in the game, and a 2-run homer to Willie Calhoun. Judge's second homer was met with some slight controversy when Sportsnet announcers Dan Shulman and Buck Martinez noticed Aaron's eyes divert away from the pitcher to look somewhere else. The next pitch, he slammed into the WestJet flight deck. The Blue Jays were held off the score sheet until the 8th inning. Matt Chapman scored on an RBI single by Whit Merrifield. Vladdy hit a 2-out RBI double to score George Springer, giving the Jays a 4-run inning. The final score, Yankees won 7-4. Both teams had 8 hits. 3 of New York's hits left the park, accounting for 4 runs. Kevin Gausman got the start on Tuesday, pitching 7 innings with only 5 hits and 3 runs, only 2 earned. He struck out an amazing 10 batters, only walking 2. The Yankees starter was tossed out of the game before the 4th inning for having a sticky substance on his hands. In a previous start, he was given the opportunity to wash his hands by this very same umpiring crew. Following Tuesday's ejection from the game, he was subsequently suspended for 10 games. After a single to Springer, walking Bo, striking out both Guerrero and Varsho, then walking Matt Chapman to load the bases, Yankees reliever Ian Hamilton was pulled from the game with an unknown injury after 27 pitches. Kiermaier hit a 2-out home run in the 5th, followed by an RBI double from Bo Bichette and an RBI single by Vladdy to tie the game at 3. Reliever Eric Swanson would be tagged with the loss, giving up a 2-run homer to Aaron Judge in the 8th. The final score, the Yankees take the first 2 games of the series, winning 6-3. Both teams had 9 hits. The Yankees had 2 home runs to Toronto's 1. On Wednesday, Chris Bassitt got the start, coming off his complete game shutout versus the Braves. The Yankees would counter with Garrett Cole. Bassitt pitched 7 scoreless innings, giving up only 3 hits, striking out 7 with 1 walk. After yesterday's performance, Chris Bassitt has 27 consecutive scoreless innings, the 3rd most in franchise history, only behind Roger Clemens with 33 and Dave Stieb with 34, although Stieb's was over 2 seasons. Garrett Cole went scoreless, pitching 6 innings. He gave up 7 hits, striking out 6 and allowing 2 walks. After 9 innings, the game was still scoreless. Romano came in to pitch the 9th, only needing 12 pitches. He then kept New York from cashing in the runner from second in the top of the 10th. Then in the bottom of the 10th, Danny Jansen hit a walk-off home run. The final score, the Blue Jays won in extra innings, 3-0, out-hitting the Yankees 10-3. New York committed 3 errors. Later today, they will wrap up the 4-game series with Jose Barrios looking to tie the series at 2 games apiece, while Nestor Cortez will be looking to give the Yankees a 3-1 series win. After today, we won't see the Yankees until September 19th, when the Jays travel to Yankee Stadium for 3 games. The remaining May early bird prizes for this homestand of May 12th to May 21st are on sale, and the jackpot is already over $317,805. For today, Thursday, May 18th, their third Blue Jays memorabilia bundle pack for this homestand. Friday, May 19th is a $5,000 cash prize. On Saturday, May 20th is for original Rogers Center seats. And finally, on Sunday, May 21st is the May Grand Prize Jackpot, currently estimated at $317,805, but that'll go up. Ticket sales will close on Sunday, May 21st at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. The jackpot winning number will be posted to the Jays Care website. I'll leave a link in the description below. Last week in Blue Jays history, I revealed that our 6 missing home games came in 2010 and 2021. I don't know how or if the Blue Jays will ever get those games back. I did make a mock schedule for the next few seasons to try and recover them gradually, at the same time trying to even out the team-by-team imbalance. With that said, let me tell you which teams we have the biggest imbalance of home games with, and which teams they favor. Yes, for some teams we hold the home game advantage. I thought of a number of ways to present this information. I could go team by team and year by year, and yes, my databases do have that information. How about I break it down by division? Except the problem with that is, the current division alignments hasn't always been the case. In fact, 2 teams have even switched leagues. As most of you know, there used to be only 4 divisions. I'm only going back to 1977 here. League realignment has caused teams to switch divisions, created 2 central divisions, and moving teams from west to east. So if I break it down by division, where do those games belong? Using the Milwaukee Brewers, for example, they used to be in the AL East with Toronto. Then they were moved to the Central, and then they jumped leagues and are now in the NL Central. Before moving to the Central Division, Toronto played Milwaukee 222 times. They played Milwaukee 45 times before the Brewers jumped to the National League. So where do those games fit versus Toronto? Essentially, I decided to present the Milwaukee Brewers 3 times. I'll start with the National League over in the West. The current 5 teams that make up the NL West have always been in the West. Thanks to expansion and realignment, some teams have moved out of the division. Luckily, we never played interleague games against the West before that happened. So when Cincinnati and Houston moved to the Central, and the Atlanta Braves moved to the East, there were no regular season games to record. Yes, the Braves used to be in the NL West. Crazy, right? By the end of the 2023 season, Toronto will have played a total of 114 times against teams from the NL West. 54 of those games will have been played in Toronto, and 60 away from Toronto. We will have played all but one of them evenly, both home and away. We have played the San Francisco Giants the most at 26 games, 13-13, followed by the Dodgers and Rockies with 24 games. Los Angeles we will have played evenly, Colorado not so much. After 2023, the Diamondbacks will have played against Toronto 22 times and San Diego only 18 times. So what happened with Colorado? Well, we'll have played in their ballpark 15 times, including 3 this season, while they have only played in Toronto 9 times. I think for the next 2 seasons, Colorado should make sure they have their passports in order. Join me next week for my look at the NL Central. Last week I said I'd do a breakdown of my preseason predictions versus how the games have actually played out. As it turns out, by holding off until this week, I can give a 40-game breakdown, which is essentially a quarterly report. In the first 40 games, there have been 13 different series against 13 different teams. So far, my prediction rates falls a little bit short of half, with only 6 being exactly correct. The series versus the Royals, Angels, Tigers, Astros, Mariners, and Pirates were all in line with my preseason predictions, except for Pittsburgh, where I wavered and predicted a 2-1 series win during the show. Of the 7 series I got wrong, 4 of them I underestimated the number of wins, and 3 I overestimated. Tampa and the series in New York, for those 2, I predicted a 2-1 series loss. The Jays won both 2-1. For Chicago and Atlanta, I predicted a 2-1 series win. Both were 3-game sweeps. The 3 series I overestimated are St. Louis, Boston, and Philadelphia. In St. Louis, I predicted a 2-1 series win, while the team lost the final 2 games. In Boston, the thorn in my side, I predicted a 3-1 series win. Well, we got swept, playing like Boston from last season. In Philadelphia, I predicted a 2-game split. Instead, we lost both games. By the end of the series versus the Atlanta Braves, I had predicted a team record of 25-15. The team record after the series versus the Braves was 24-16. Even though I only got 6 of the 13 series perfect, I'll give myself a passing grade. Starting Friday, the Blue Jays will wrap up their homestand with their first meeting with the Baltimore Orioles. Prior to the season, I had predicted a 3-game sweep over the Orioles. I'm getting ahead of myself though. Let's have a look at our head-to-head history. By the end of last season, the Blue Jays had played the Orioles more times than any other franchise with 705 total games. That's 3 more than the 702 versus Boston and 6 more than the 699 versus the Yankees. Our overall record versus Baltimore is 384-321, a winning percentage of .545, or 63 games above 500. What's the home and away split? We do have a slight edge playing 354 of the games in Toronto as opposed to 351 games being played in Baltimore. Oh, the wins and losses. Okay, yeah, of the 354 games played in Toronto, the Blue Jays have won 213 times to the 141 times Baltimore has won. That gives the Blue Jays a better winning percentage at .602 or 72 games above 500. In more recent history, going back to 2017, we hold a 36-20 advantage at home. Last season, Baltimore held their own with a 5-5 record in Toronto, but the Jays took the overall season series, albeit with the slightest of margins at 10-9. The Blue Jays did win 3 of the 4 games played in spring training, splitting the 2 games away and winning both games in Dunedin. The projected starting rotation for this series have Kikuchi starting on Friday, Manoah starting on Saturday, and Sunday would see Gausman wrap up the series. So why did I predict a series sweep before the season, and I'm wavering from that now? Most experts predicted the Orioles to finish 4th in the division. With that and our overall record versus Baltimore, I thought a sweep wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility. Have I wavered? Yes, and not for the Jays' ability to handle Baltimore, but my faith in Alek Manoah has. I was hoping facing the Yankees would set him in the right direction. Instead, he only managed 4 innings, walking more than he struck out. He needs to locate his fastball, and until he can do that, he's a liability in the rotation. I still see the Blue Jays taking 2 of the 3 games. Tropicana Field, the Blue Jays' little shop of horrors. Before last year, this place was a thing of nightmare for the Blue Jays. Okay, let me go to the records and look up our history at the Trop. Since the Rays' inception in 1998, Toronto has played into the Tropicana Field 227 times, having only won 87 of those games. That's a winning percentage of only .383, or 46 games below 500. To put that in perspective, the next worst road record is versus the Yankees with .421 winning percentage, followed by Boston at .461, and then Baltimore with .479. Since 2017, the Blue Jays' record at the Trop has been 19-35. We also lost both spring training games there this year. With that said, I honestly have high hopes for our series next week. Over the last couple seasons, we are 4-5, still losing, but holding our own. Maybe things have turned around. A quote I remember last year, Whit Merrifield, puzzled by our lack of success at the Trop, says he loves hitting there. Since his trade to Toronto, the team has split the last 6 games and winning the last 2. We also have a new center fielder that used to play there quite a bit. Our projected starting pitchers over the 4-game series are Chris Bassett on Monday, Jose Barrios on Tuesday, Yusei Kikuchi on Wednesday, and then Alek Manoah will wrap up the series on Thursday. My preseason prediction, given our overall record in Tropicana Field, was to lose 3 of the 4 games. I think the Jays will at least pull off a split, with a good chance for a 3-1 series win. Well, that should do it for this episode. Join me next Thursday as I review the 4th game versus the Yankees. I'll give my review for the weekend series versus the Baltimore Orioles to wrap up our 10-game homestand. And finally, I'll take a look at the first 3 games versus the Rays. I'll provide an update for the May jackpot for the Blue Jays Care 50-50 draw. In Blue Jays history, I'll cover the history with the National League Central Division. As I mentioned earlier, the home run antics around the base paths. I'll provide my thoughts on that. I also didn't get to talk about the podcast Jump to YouTube, so I want to take a few moments to discuss that next week. Finally, we will preview the weekend series versus Minnesota and our return home to face the Milwaukee Brewers. I've given you my predictions for the next two series. Why not drop a comment with your predictions? How do you feel about Alek Manoah? Do you think he can right the ship, or do you think he needs to find himself for the stint at AAA? What are your thoughts? Also, before next week, if you saw the Marcell Ozuna's home run antics last Saturday, tell me about it. How do you see it? What's your thoughts on showboating around the bases? As always, I've been your humble host, Jerry Schwinard, and you've been listening to Blue Jays vs. Them. Once again, I want to thank you for spending your time with me. Join me next Thursday and every Thursday of the regular season. Until then, take care of yourself and take care of your loved ones. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and let's go Blue Jays. Let's go. Bye for now.